Crazy thought here. What if you tracked gold like you did milestone experience in Dungeons & Dragons, other tabletop roleplay games? Well, do I got a wealth system for you that's going to make you rich or poor or anything in between, and I'm giving it to y'all for free. So in this video, we're talking about gold and a lot of the problems with giving it out and using it and all that kind of stuff, and then this new system to see if you like it and want to try it out. So let's talk about the problems, then I'll get into the system. So the first problem in general that comes up with gold is you have to have something to spend it on across an entire campaign, right? Early on in campaigns, it's usually pretty simple. The characters have like a starting amount of gold, and then they need some items and some equipment and things. Maybe they might need to buy a horse and transportation, but once they have the essentials, a lot of times Dungeon Masters run out of things to do. And that rabbit hole is a topic for another video. I'm talking about the different types of things you could put in front of your players. Player housing, player employees, being able to bring the people onto your team, things they have to save up for and buy, buying magic items, buying custom magic items, enchanting gear, tattoo. There's so many things I could get into. The second issue there is with gold is a little bit of an annoying tracking of it. It's kind of like tracking encumbrance, tracking arrows for a ranger. I know those are a little bit more extraneous examples, but most people don't do those, especially tracking arrows. Please don't do that. Tracking gold is a little bit more important, obviously, but if they walk into a bar and they buy a drink and they have some sort of roleplay moment, five silver, 1 silver. Do you want to bing them and tag them for each of those little interactions, especially if it's just a cool, fun moment? So you might want to have a system that we'll talk about here in a second, where you could just buy and do things at certain chunks of tiers along the way. Third issue, and this might be the most stressful one for us Dungeon Masters, is how much does stuff cost in general? My super pro tip here is I think of 1 gold as $100. 1 copper is $1, a silver $10, 1 gold is $100. And if you just think of how much that would cost in real life, move the decimal place twice, and there's the price. It actually works out pretty well. So if something in real life would be like $500, I would just move the decimal place twice. So 500 goes to 5 gold. Or you could just say 500 copper, but that's weird. But either way, it doesn't change the problem that coming up with that on the fly might not be the easiest, and you have to go, how much does it cost, and you have to think about it, and it's really hard to try and pinpoint exactly, and then players might disagree or be like, oh, that's over, oh yeah, you don't want to play those games. Time out. We're talking about gold here and enriching the world around you, and with all the different ways and different things in the world that the players can buy. So this sponsor of this video is World Anvil. I'm showing you guys my World Anvil account. I've talked about this a couple of times. World Anvil is a great friend of the channel, and I really love what they're doing because they're making the life easier for us Dungeon Masters to bring your world to life. I got my World of Corin here for my second homebrew campaign. They have a dashboard for you to really kind of get a big picture of everything. You can view your world, add in articles, maps, timelines, images of your world, especially if you're like me and you have a bunch of images that you have and create, and whether it be resources that you can print out or hand out or just show them, you can put those images here. Manuscripts, campaign, they even have advanced tools with even more stuff. And the advanced tools is some of my favorite things. We have content trees to be able to really organize some things, calendars to kind of keep track of dates, player characters to be able to show your players and stuff, or just keep track of your own player characters, secret information. And speaking of secrets, Dungeon Master secrets, monster stat blocks, tables, to-do list. I need me a to-do list. And they keep adding new stuff like whiteboards and timelines and all this different stuff to give you more and more tools to use in your games. And look at all this. They have so many different categories. I can just go through this and think about different things and organize them. Put some myths and legends. Oh, I didn't even think to put myths and legends in my world of like heroes of long past, villains of long past that maybe or maybe not still alive. Military units, professions, and different things of where are the best blacksmiths in the land. Titles of how different factions work, species of creatures and animals, organizations, materials, gods and deities. The list goes on. So check out World Anvil and link down in the description, and thank you to World Anvil for sponsoring this video. Enter in the wealth system that I'm going to be showcasing you guys in this video. But I want to give a shout out and props to Dan and Jazza from Tabletop Time. I've said this before, but I worked with Dan and Jazza on Cogent. I love their Cogent system. We talked a lot back and forth and did a little bit of game dev, and I threw out some of my thoughts to them, and now they're off doing their own thing, and I'm making my own tabletop game, DC 20RPG. If you haven't heard of it, check it out. But that was really cool working with them, and they have a great game design head on there, so they're coming up with ideas and focusing on the stuff that matters and letting everything else go, kind of like the whole goal of this system. That's why I gave an analogy earlier to tracking experience, every single point of experience. If you want to do that, cool. I've done that before. It's kind of fun in a weird, nerdy, crunchy math way. I love it. And then there's milestone experience, which is very simple and blocked off in chunks. And in general, I run my games kind of with a mix in between. But that's not what we're talking about. We are going to talk about this wealth system that has chunks of tiers. This wealth system is found found in Alcantar's Almanac of All Things. It is my expansion to D&D 5th edition. Links down in the description for that. Is the single biggest resource that I've ever made. The most amount of value you could possibly pack into one PDF of over 230 pages of homebrew expansion rules for every single part of your game. This being a great example. Combat rules, social encounter, exploration, skill challenges, mass combat, and a wealth system. So I'm showcasing this wealth system for free, giving it away in this video, showing you guys what's up. See if you like it or not. Let me know what you think. Let's get into it. This wealth system revolves around a wealth tier list. There are 9 tiers starting with wretched all the way up to royalty. So you can work your way up this tier list. Most player characters would start off at the tier 3, which would be the poor tier. Maybe if their backstory had they come from this or that and you want to, okay, cool, they can start off with modest and then comfortable, wealthy, aristocratic, nobility, royalty. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. And the gaps between this get larger and larger. So to take this chart away for a second, I want you to think of this, and this is why, and you'll see the benefits already with this system, and I'll tell you how it works. I'm going to put you in the hot seat for a second real quick. How much does a sword cost? How much gold does a sword cost? What about a horse? How much gold does the horse cost? What about a house? What about a really nice house? What about a kingdom? How much does that cost? You see what I'm saying? That's really crazy on the spot to be able to think about like that, right? So here's where I want your head to go so you can see this concept of this system. Is we're going to use real life money for the sake of this. Let's say this first little tier is $1 to $10. I want you to think of what items would be in the $1 to $10 range. Really small. Go to a dollar store, go to a convenience store. You're talking about a really small range. And then let's go to the next bracket, 10 times higher than that. So times 10 times 10 is 100. So from $10 to $100, what kind of things would be in that bracket? As far as what things cost between $10 and $100, what things cost between $100 and $1,000? What about $1,000 to $10,000? That's a pretty big jump right there. What about $10,000 to $100,000? That's a very, what things cost that much? And now you're starting to see where this might be going, and it's going to be very easy for you to pinpoint what tier this goes in. What about $100,000 to $1 million? $1 million to, you get the idea. So each one of these brackets here, I'll bring back up the list right here. Each one of these brackets is going to be chunks of money that get 10 times bigger as you get going. That's how you go from wretched all the way to royalty. I'm going to show you the first 3 tiers here. So wretched, squalid, and poor. You got urchins, beggars, and hobos, paupers, and peasants. And now, ooh, a commoner. Okay, cool. That's tier 3, poor, is a commoner. And you have everything segmented and categorized in these different pockets. So at the wretched tier, you have things like meal scraps, secondhand dirty clothes, no shelter whatsoever, trash you find on the ground. They don't even have a gold to their name pretty much. You're between 0 and 1 gold is kind of how you'd want to think of this. Squalid, you have basic food for the day, nights in a cheap inn. These are different bracket. These are different types of items in this bracket. Clothing, a sturdy rope, a bottle of rum. So now we're talking about a gold and a little bit more than 1 gold. You could buy a night at an inn, a new piece of clothing, all that kind of stuff, right? So you get a little bit more, right? So it's 10 times more technically, but you're starting off with nothing. And it exponentially gets more. And now in tier 3, we're talking a little bit more extravagant night out, a damaged weapon. So it's not the best weapon, but it's a crappy weapon. Common livestock, camping gear. This is a little bit larger things. And now here's the full table in its full glory. All right. So, and you can also here, I'll get you just a nice big view so you can get a screenshot of it if you want to get a screenshot of this so you can kind of think if you want to use it or not. But here's this whole thing. Modest is where you start to talk about weapons, a horse, wagon. Oh my gosh. Comfortable is very fancy horse, extravagant weapon. And you'll see things start to categorically get a little bit nicer and better as you move all the way up here. Wealthy, you have a mansion, transport, luxury, security force, castles and the aristocrat, caravan of horses, oh my God, a large army, a kingdom. It's crazy. So now that I've explained this wealth tier list, how does it work and what the heck, how do you even use this thing? So here's how it works. Wealth tiers. Purchasing anything on your current wealth tier decreases your wealth tier by 2 tiers. So for example, if you start off at tier 3 of wealth at the poor category, if a commoner were to go on an extravagant night out, buy an entire weapon, buy a common livestock, buy an entire set of camping gear, all these different types of things, if they made a big purchase like that, they would go down 2 tiers in wealth from that purchase. So if you purchase anything at the current level of wealth you're at, which would represent you spending all the money you have, really, if you're at that tier, you drop 2 tiers down. But if you purchase anything 1 level below your current wealth tier, it only decreases by 1. So if a tier 3 poor person purchased anything from the tier 2, basic food for the day, a night cheap, something simple like this, but like go shopping for some stuff, they would only drop 1 tier, which would represent a poor person going on a shopping spree, getting a couple items or whatever, and then now they're squalid. They got to work a little bit more. And here's the nice part, which makes things very efficient and smooth. You'll see is purchasing anything 2 tiers below where you're currently at is essentially free. Because if you have a 3rd tier wealth, you are a commoner, you're not worrying about getting dirty clothes or not having a shelter or trash you find on the ground. That's not where you're at. So anything 2 tiers below where you're at, you don't have to pay for. Let's throw another example out there. Let's say you're level 5. You work your way up, you go on adventuring, you're collecting all this loot, and you're working your way up through wealth tiers, which we'll talk about here in a second. Is now you want to go buy something and you're comfortable. You're at tier 5. 2 tiers below that is tier 3, the poor tier. So somebody with that much type of, adventuring gear and gold and items and all this kind of stuff, they're not going to have to worry about livestock, camping gear, simple transportation, going out at night and all that kind of stuff. So if somebody at the tier 5 wealth goes and does that, they don't have to go, and you don't have to dock them for pay in that way. But if somebody at tier 5 comfortable wants to go out and buy a solid weapon, like a fully functional weapon that's a really good, and maybe it's something they want to get an upgrade for, whatever, they go out and they buy that and they drop 1 wealth tier. So now the big picture of how this works and how this could maybe be nice in your games if you don't really want to focus on gold that much. You have players in these 9 chunks of wealth where at first they're going to start off, they're going to move up pretty quickly. Going from wretched to where you're on the streets and don't have any money whatsoever, which in general, players are going to start off at tier 3 already. Working their way to tier 4 would happen, relatively soon. They go on a quest, they get a reward or something, they upgrade. But then they probably will go back down because they're going to spend that income. But the nice part about this is you don't have to track gold. As a dungeon master, you have the full capacity to understand what the rewards are, and then you get a huge reward and massive reward, whatever. They go up 1 tier, and then you don't have to track what that means. And you don't have to track how much actual gold that literally means. They just know they upgraded a wealth tier. And that would be part of how you could reward your players. They come back from adventuring, they have a huge hoard of gold. You guys upgrade a wealth tier. Hey! And that's a very tangible, understandable reward that they now have. So now, if they are at the modest tier, they could now, all the things that they were having, the food each day, cheap nights out, the clothing, sturdy ropes, they now can go get that stuff for free because they've earned it. And now, that's the other part that some people might be saying down in the comments right now, oh, they could just infinitely go by, they're going to break the game. This is something where your players have to understand you're using a system that is making their lives easier. If they start to abuse it and they go buy infinite amounts of rope, you go down to wealth tier. You know what I'm saying? If they are obviously abusing it to where they're just buying, they're going out every night and they're going crazy and you want to tax them on it, go ahead and tax them on it. But if you want to let them go out in the town and have fun because they've earned it, let them go out and have fun. It's up to you as a dungeon master and kind of issuing out the table and seeing if they are abusing this system. Anytime you put in a homebrew rule or homebrew system and they start abusing it, have a conversation with your players and okay, let's actually just track gold now. Oh, or maybe that's what you want to do and that's what's best for your table. Right now I'm running a Curse of Strahd game. I track gold in general. I track gold because it's a gritty survival type game and I want them to really, the gold matters, and they've had to save up to buy a suit of armor and they wanted to upgrade the suit of armor to protect against bites and all this kind of stuff. That is something I want to run, and I really do want to issue out gold. But in a campaign where you really don't care about gold, which is honestly a lot of campaigns. I would have definitely used this system in my last campaign if me, Dan, and Jazza had gotten together sooner. I would have totally ran this because the amount of gold that I would have had, like they'd come back from a mission, you guys upgrade a wealth tier, and they can do whatever they want with that. If they want to buy some sort of big item, they go down a wealth tier. If they want to save up to buy a house, they can go up a wealth tier. And maybe they buy it and drop down 2 tiers, or they wait and they keep working their way up and then they can just buy a house. Who knows? But whatever's important for the players, they're going to be able to cash in on. Some players might kind of keep where they're at and they all kind of work their way up together. One player might just want to really save up gold. And that's another thing to keep in mind. This is exponential. So if one player doesn't spend anything and they're just hoarding their money and they get up to tier 5, they're comfortable, and everybody else is spending and dropping down, they go on an adventure. They go on an adventure, they get a huge hoard of loot. Maybe this tier 5 person, maybe they don't go up a notch yet. You keep track of that as a dungeon master. Everybody else goes back from 3 to 4. This guy doesn't move, right? And they just stay there. And they go on another adventure, they spend it and all that stuff. They go on another adventure, get some more gold. Now they go up to tier 6. Wow, they're now wealthy. They've been saving up all this money. They are wealthy. And how crazy would that be if that player could go on a shopping spree and buy a whole bunch of stuff from tier 4, again, 2 tiers down, so it's free, and they could go on a shopping spree, buy their party a bunch of stuff, buy themselves some stuff, they earned it because they saved up for it, and that'd be a cool thing. Or maybe as a dungeon master, you want to kind of intervene and be like, okay, and before you would drop down a tier, you can get this, this, that, and this, and this. Okay, you get a couple of these. That's what you can get before you drop down a tier. Okay, cool, I'll do that. And now that's cool. This player gets to role play a wealthy character, or maybe they get an inheritance from their backstory, or they have some sort of quest they go on where they only find some gem. Or the whole group could stay together on the same page and you only have one single representative system of the group's wealth tier. Instead of having individuals with stuff, they all have one wealth tier and they have to kind of share it. And ultimately, that's it. I hope the table makes sense and you can kind of see the different parts of what sections are in what level of tier. Now I'm going to ask you that same question using this system. Here's the chart. And if a player comes up to you and they want to buy a sword, that's tier 4, right? If you're at tier 4, cool. You're going to drop down to tier 2. And now you have the sword. Sweet. Got to work your way back up now. But the nice thing is, at these low tiers, like I said, it's easier to go up faster. So players, if they stay and hang around that low tier, they'll go from 4 down to 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 3, 4. And they'll bounce around there at the bottom depending on how much they want to spend money like it's a burning a hole in their pocket or whatever. How much is a horse? Tier 4. You don't have to actually say specific numbers and specific gold values and think about all that kind of stuff, right? And if they want to buy a house, well, there you go. You have the system to be able to see, okay, house, okay, you could get a house, but it's like really small rental home at 4, but then it's going to drop you 2 tiers. Or if you get to wealthy, you could buy a mansion. Get like a little guild hall for your party. Ooh, that's super cool. But then you're going to drop down from tier 6 down to tier 4 and work your way up again. This is designed for the groups that don't want to track a whole bunch of gold and they want to let the players work their way up. And once they've earned their way up to get a certain level of wealth tier, 2 tiers below it becomes free and it becomes this like cool role play stuff, unless you want to interject as a dungeon master. Things 1 tier below, okay, yeah, you can get this, but it's going to drop you 1 notch, right? And then, things at their tier, that's basically them spending a whole bunch of their money, a large percentage of their actual net worth or whatever, and you're going to get dropped down. And then you literally can't buy the things above you. It works out pretty smooth. But anyway, I hope this makes sense. I described this a little differently. This is actually the second time of me filming this thing because I described it first as I explained the process of the tiers, but then you didn't really know how the gold works. So I hope the real life money example in increments of times 10, I hope that all worked out and makes sense. And this is just one system of many in Alkandar's Almanac. The whole goal of Alkandar's Almanac, of all things, is to go across all things. Everything from gold to mass combat and health potions, everything in between, of multiple different ways to run your game, because all of us run our games differently. Even myself, I run my games differently from one group to the next group to another group. A brand new group, I'm going to run things differently than what I'm doing in my Curse of Strahd group. And with all those different groups, you need different rules, and that's my whole goal with Alkandar's, is having hundreds, maybe there's 1,000 homebrew rules in there to be able to tweak and change your games in the ways you want. I hope this makes sense. Hope it helped you out. Maybe it even sparks some little fires in your head about, you know what, that thought, I'm going to go this way. So let me know what you think. Check out Alkandar's Almanac if you want to see more. And until next time, stay creative. Think outside the box. Peace.